Hey, welcome. Ever wonder how a new educational idea actually holds up when it leaves the pages of a guide and hits the real world? Well, you are in the right place. In this explainer, we're going to get our hands dirty and dig into the real lessons learned by organizations who tested the NFAE methodology. That's aligning non-formal adult education with actual learners. Let's get into it.
So let's just cut right to the chase, right? What were these pilot organizations actually doing? What were they trying to figure out? And what did they learn when they rolled up their sleeves and put this whole new approach into practice?
The first thing to get is that for most of these organizations, this was a totally new way of thinking. Seriously. Before this project, they weren't really describing their courses with things like specific learning outcomes or assigning levels on the European qualification framework. That's the system that helps compare learning across different countries, or even calculating how much work it would take for a learner. This was a pretty big shift.
And listen, this whole journey wasn't happening in some sterile, controlled lab. Nope. The entire point was to see how this methodology would work in a bunch of different, messy, real-world situations with learners who are facing all kinds of different challenges all across Europe.
And when you look at who they were working with, wow, it's all over the map. In Spain, you've got migrants and at-risk youth. Head over to Italy, and it's unemployed artisans. In Hungary, it's women facing disadvantages, and in Romania, adults with fewer opportunities. So you have to ask, how could one single methodology possibly work for all of them? That's the million-dollar question, and it really shows just how flexible this whole approach needed to be.
So the big hurdle here, it wasn't just about ticking boxes or filling out forms. It was about learning a whole new language to talk about learning itself. I mean, educators had to figure out how to set clear goals, guess the complexity of their courses, calculate all the effort needed from their students, and then come up with assessments that actually measured what was learned. The big question was, could they do all of that and still keep that welcoming learner-first vibe that makes non-formal education so special?
And you know what? That question leads us right to the single biggest, most important lesson that came out of all this. It was something every single partner discovered, no matter what country they were in or who their students were. And it's this: everything, absolutely everything starts with the learners.
Man, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This isn't just some nice, fluffy idea. It's the absolute bedrock. For a lot of these learners, people who might have had some really bad experiences with school in the past, feeling psychologically safe is what makes it possible to learn at all. That safe space builds the trust they need to take risks, be a little vulnerable, and really dive in.
And here's a perfect example of what that looks like in the real world. In Spain, the team was working with learners who struggled with reading. They quickly realized their assessment tests were way too complicated. So the challenge wasn't just to test knowledge, but to simplify the language so they weren't accidentally testing reading skills. A small change, maybe, but it was absolutely crucial.
Then in Hungary, they did something that sounds simple, but was a total game changer. They let mothers bring their babies to class with them. Think about that. It showed such a deep understanding of the real-life barriers these women were facing, and in return, it built this incredible sense of loyalty and commitment.
And how about this one from Italy? They found this magic in what they call the Italian tea break. They took time for everyone to just relax and share tea and traditional sweets. This wasn't just a break from learning. It was a powerful way to build a real community, to break down cultural walls, and to create genuine trust between migrant artisans from all over the world.
So when you hear all these stories, from changing the words on a test, to welcoming babies, to sharing tea, what do they all tell us? Well, they're all pointing to one single, powerful truth. This methodology is a flexible tool, not some rigid rulebook. The real magic happened when the educators took the theory and adapted it to fit the real, human needs of their learners.
The Italian pilot is just a perfect case study for this. See, their initial plan had learners doing a ton of independent study, homework. But they took a step back and were really honest with themselves. They realized their learners, these were unemployed artisans who maybe weren't super comfortable with technology, they thrived in a structured, supportive group. So they changed their workload calculation to focus more on guided, collaborative activities in the classroom. They didn't change the people, they adapted the plan to fit the people.
And if you want a fantastic model for assessment that actually makes sense, look no further than Romania. Their course was for people who wanted to start a business. So how'd they check if they were learning? Not with some boring written test. No, they had the learners actually pitch the business plan that they had been building all throughout the course. The final test was a direct, practical demonstration of the exact skills they signed up to learn. It's brilliant. Okay, so after all this hard work, right? The planning, the adapting, the tea breaks, the whole shebang, what was the actual real-world payoff? What were the real benefits for the organizations and, maybe most importantly, for the learners themselves? For the organizations themselves, the gains were huge. This whole process, it kind of forced them to get way clearer about how they designed and planned their courses. It gave them a powerful new way to talk about the value of what they do, which made their work so much more transparent and understandable to partners, to funders, to anyone really.
But for the learners, I mean, this is where it gets really powerful. All of a sudden, their hard work, their achievements, they were visible in a way that could be officially recognized. This gave their self-confidence a massive boost, and it created real, tangible pathways to maybe getting a job or going on to more education. Their learning wasn't invisible anymore.
You know, sometimes the simplest things hit the hardest. This quote from the Hungarian team, it just gets right to the heart of it all. For people who have so often been ignored or overlooked by the system, just receiving a certificate, a piece of paper with their name on it that says you did this, is an incredibly powerful, meaningful moment.
All right, so when we step back and look at all of this, all these stories, all these different experiences from the field, what's the one big, powerful, simple lesson that just shines through it all?
It really comes down to this. Successful alignment is not about trying to cram the wonderful, flexible world of non-formal education into some stiff, rigid academic box. It's about using the tools, the learning outcomes, the workload estimates, the EQF levels, to better serve real people in their actual real-life situations. The whole point is to make their learning journey more visible and more valued, not to make it less human.
So you see, the ultimate lesson is that true alignment isn't about the paperwork, it's about the people. It's about really seeing our learners, understanding their world, and adapting what we do with care and with empathy. And in our final explainer, we're going to give you the practical tools to do just that as we dive into the NFAE toolkit. We'll see you there. Thanks for joining us.